I'm going to go ahead and kick it off. My name is Bob Ray, NPG Solutions. We welcome to this Supplier Spotlight Series. This is NPG recognizes some elite suppliers that are doing outstanding things in the field, and we like to share what they're doing and how they're impacting our industry, companies across the world. Today's is the hidden gem, CATO, Secure Access Service Edge, or otherwise known as SASE. We have Bill Fuller, he's co-founder at NPG Solutions. We have Chuck Wadding, channel manager at CATO Networks, and Jerry Young, who is the one of the elite engineers at CATO that'll be walking us through this event and sharing with you some of the things that they've experienced and some of the things that they see in terms of trending in the space. So I'm going to go ahead and pass this along to Bill Fuller, and Bill's going to help facilitate a discussion with CATO. Bill?
I want to take a moment here to thank Jerry Young. Jerry's one of the top engineers out there in the world today, and we've had the pleasure of working with him and the opportunity to have him here today to talk to us about what is really buzzing around in the industry today with this word SASE. We're excited to have him. So Jerry, thank you very much for being with us today.
Definitely. Thank you for inviting. Thank you for inviting me, and I'm looking forward to an interactive session where we can kind of showcase this new technical concept that Gartner came out with last year called SASE.
Yeah, so Jerry, I'll start this off and I'll lead in here to your presentation. But when we look at CATO, we love CATO because CATO, you guys really do some cool stuff. You're in the forefront of SD-WAN, in the forefront of security today. And when we look at how we used to look at networks, you'd have your MPLS network, you may have a firewall, things were pretty much siloed. And today, with the coming of this SASE, you really got to bring security into the discussion and make it just a one conversation type of a discussion these days. So with that said, let's start off today by having you provide us with a brief overview of CATO, and if you could tell us what SASE is and why it's such a hot topic in the industry today.
Sure. So just to start off, again, my name is Jerry Young. I'm the senior sales engineer for the Midwest here at CATO. I work with Chuck Wadding, and we deal with any opportunities that customers have related to SD-WAN or SASE. So for the audience that's unaware, I'll spend a few minutes, and I'm sure everybody's tired of PowerPoint, so I'll just spend a few minutes giving a brief overview of who CATO is, what we look like, what we're focused on, what the SASE, what SASE is to the marketplace, so that everyone can get a little bit of an overview or an understanding. And then we'll just kind of have a technical discussion around the way that we see the marketplace going, things like that. So we want it to be very collaborative. So just a little bit of background into who CATO is. So CATO was started by the two gentlemen you see on the screen here. Shlomo Kramer was one of the original founders of Checkpoint Firewalls. So somebody that's has a very inherent background into security. He also started another organization called Imperva, which is one of the world's first web-based firewalls. So somebody that has a very rich, diverse understanding of cloud as well as security. And he has partnered up with a gentleman by the name of Gershotz, who's our CTO. And he was also at Imperva and started another company in Capsula, which did a lot in the cloud space and dealt a lot with like DDoS mitigation and things of that nature. And so as you can see, right, with two big names like that, we've been able to secure some quite a bit of funding from some top tier venture capital firms to support the the technology that we're trying to bring to market. And if you look over to the right-hand side, we've also successfully deployed this. We're about 5 years old, and we've successfully deployed this at over 500 different customers, and I think we're up to around 5,000 plus branches currently. So I like to start off with a quote from Gartner, because I think it's really applicable to the way the marketplace is going and how things are tending to be strategized here. So, after decades of focusing on networks, performance, and features, the future of network innovation will target operational simplicity, automation, reliability, flexibility, or flexible business models. So about last year, at the end of last year, Gartner came out with this concept for a strategic roadmap called SASE. So we've all been down the road of SD-WAN, and SD-WAN is SD-WAN is given us an opportunity to kind of change the landscape that's been pretty consistent for the last 10 plus years. And this is kind of the first real big change from a networking perspective, right? And so what Gartner identified is that what Gartner identified at the end of last year is that SD-WAN was the first element of this, but incorporating security has become such an integral part of it. And as customers are going down this road of digital transformation and they're moving traffic away from their edge-based, siloed DC-related type internal, keep everything in-house type design, they really have struggled with ways to keep things flexible and keep things simple and to make them easy from an operation perspective. So just to kind of give you an overview, I'm going to give a little bit of a brief history, and then I'll kind of bring it all back into perspective as it pertains to SASE. All right, so you can see, right, for the last 10 plus years, we've all been dealing with MPLS. It's been a rock solid technology. It works. There's quite a bit of overhead assigned to it. But as we're moving traffic out of our networks, out of our silos, out to the beyond the edge into the cloud, it's not a completely effective technology. So along comes SD-WAN, right? The first iteration. Now we're able to get a little bit closer to some of those cloud-based resources. Now you're talking about being able to extend out into the cloud, those cloud-based resources, be able to do some cloud acceleration. You're starting to run into issues because now you don't have a global backbone to get access to those cloud-based resources, and the branch security has been exposed because now instead of backhauling it all through a central location where you control and can orchestrate and control how the solutions are supported, now the expectation is the traffic egress is at the branch. So there's some big security concerns, and vendors and customers have felt that, and it's been one of the trends that we've seen as the most significant in the market right now. And then you bring in a whole other element, the whole mobile workforce, right? Which is especially applicable today with the whole COVID concept, right? As we're dealing with resources that are no longer within our footprint, we have to make a decision. Do we want to have all their traffic come back into the network and succumb to the fact that now all of their data, all of their traffic that they're doing at their remote location, I have to now put all inside my network, and I have to deal with the fact that it's probably inefficient, and my network isn't designed for those home type users. So as you look at all these items on the screen, right? Today, traditionally, we've been able to utilize all of them by utilizing point solutions. It's not a very effective approach because you've got all these different technologies, all these different vendors that you're dealing with. You have to understand all their different technologies. So what the concept of SASE is it's taking all these different technologies, right, and moving them all into a single framework that's driven by the cloud. So as we look at the screen, right, SASE service will converge a number of different disparate network security services, including SD-WAN, secure web gateway, so the ability to filter like web-based traffic, CASB, software-defined perimeter, DNS protection, firewall as a service. Taking all these systems that we used to have as edge solutions as separate products that we had to figure out how to support with limited resources, especially as staffs get thinned out, right? And moving it all to a cloud architecture that's natively easy into one single framework that's easy to control and manage. So just to give a little bit of a background into CATO, right? We talked about building out this framework. So we've been in the industry for five plus years, right? And currently today we have around 60 different POPs that exist throughout the world. On your screen is a map of our existing POP placement. In between each of these POPs, we have tier 1 SLA-driven circuits that can connect all those locations together. So any customer that's leveraging CATO gets to leverage the fact that we have this diverse background and this reliable middle mile that a traditional SD-WAN solution isn't going to be able to provide. We remove or we mitigate the effects of the open internet, and we really can optimize and improve that experience. So Bill, I don't want to, bore people to death, right? Everybody's been through 10 million PowerPoints. So I'd rather kick it back to you and maybe just have a conversation around what you guys are seeing in the marketplace and questions that you have specifically pertaining to the technology as well as CATO as a whole to see, just to kind of have some dialogue around that.
I mean, Jerry, that sounds great. Thank you for that overview. And for sure, we've put some questions together for you that I think will bring some good dialogue here for this audience. Want to one more time remind everybody that might be on this call, please feel free to chat. Click the chat icon if you have any questions for Jerry that you think would add to the conversation. We really appreciate that. And then also there's a raise your flag if you'd like to ask them a question, and we can unmute you and you can have some dialogue with them as well. Hey, Jerry, so I've got some questions here, obviously, and we're excited to ask you, since Gartner created the term SASE and stated that the future of network security is in the cloud, we've recently seen a lot of vendors, and you've seen them as well, you're in this space, in the SD-WAN space that are shifting to the SASE strategy. You got Palo Alto, acquired CloudGenix, you got Cisco, VMware, Versa. They've all announced plans to converge their platforms into a SASE model. So if you could, share with us your thoughts on why the largest providers in the SD-WAN space are adapting the strategy now.
Well, I mean, I think the fact that Gartner says that this is the future of the way that the network is going to be, the direction that the network and the security is moving, I think that obviously plays a big factor. Realistically, as we extend out all this traffic all over the world, all to these different cloud-based services, right? We're no longer behind those four walls that we traditionally were. It's starting to become more and more cumbersome and difficult to not only secure that traffic, but also manage and support it. So I think that the SASE architecture and the way that it's built out and structured really helps mitigate some of the challenges that come along with that. And in CATO, we've natively been doing this for about 5 years, way before Gartner ever termed the term SASE. And for me, right, it's that validation. It's great to see that Gartner has recognized that this is the direction that we've already seen for years. So as we built out this different technology and we've tried to figure out how we're going to fit in the landscape, it's great to see that the market is shifting in our direction as well, because it helps validate the efforts that we put in building the solution.
Makes sense. And you guys obviously were way ahead of competition. I think it's important to note that when you're looking at going to migrating to SASE, it's important to take a look at these providers and what they truly have in their core infrastructure. Maybe you could share with us a little bit more about the uniqueness that you have in the marketplace and some of the things that the folks that are looking at a SASE play would want to consider when they're looking at other yourself or other providers in the marketplace when they're doing their due diligence?
Sure. Yeah, and I think that's a great question, right? As I'm thinking through the structure, like right off the bat, when CATO was founded, the concept of SASE was the original concept that we came up with. So our entire architecture was built from the ground up, specifically related at building out an infrastructure that's directly configured for the cloud. So as we talk about other people in the landscape, whether it be Cisco or VeloCloud, Versa, CloudGenix, and Palo Alto, they're kind of trying to take a solution that was originally designed to be a point solution and build it and move it into a structure that's driven towards the cloud. But the difference is that they built a design that wasn't natively created for the cloud. So the value that CATO really brings to the table is from an architecture perspective. That's the way that we originally were founded. That's the way that we originally started. Obviously, there's a lot of different components that go into making SASE, and I don't know that anybody in the marketplace has got every one of the criteria that Gartner has defined as being the things that they envision, the direction that they envision. But the great thing about our structure and the way that we've made it all cloud is it's really endless, the possibilities for me to add additional feature sets, for me to make additional changes. Since I'm no longer stuck dealing with the single box and having to deal with the single box, and I'm pushing everything to the cloud, for me to add additional components, for me to make changes to the way that we're structured, it's really not, it's not as much overhead as what you would traditionally get with like a box type solution.
Yeah, that's great information. As you were talking there, I got to thinking about just the whole aspect of SD-WAN and why it's so important to be evaluating security while you're focusing on SD-WAN. Can you hit on that a little bit for us? Share some thoughts there?
Sure. I mean, beyond the fact that we've seen customers that are now reaching that 3-year life cycle where they originally went into SD-WAN trying to solve just that network issue, and now they're coming back up and running into challenges relating to security. At the end of the day, right, when you're putting that traffic out on the internet, the last thing you want to do is for that to happen without you as the administrator having some foothold or control over what's taking place. So security, as we look into SD-WAN, security is a mainstay. It's the only way you're going to be successful. And the challenge is a lot of your traditional SD-WAN, I call it SD-WAN 1.0 solutions. The challenge that you're running into is that those solutions weren't natively designed to incorporate that security, so that now they've had to add some other piece in order to make that happen, whether it be looking to like a Zscaler where they're using Zscaler Cloud, or incorporate some edge-based firewall, and now you've got this box over here that you have to control, this cloud orchestration that you have to now control, and you've got all these different products that are all over the place. Troubleshooting is a nightmare. They're not all working together. Like with CATO, the cloud-based engines manage the networking and the security. So it's going through one framework as opposed to multiple, which really is going to optimize and improve that user experience, because you don't have the same level of overhead by going through multiple engines.
Excellent. I want to take a moment, and then again, if any of you out there have questions, please bring them forward, and if you have anything you'd like to share, please make this collaborative for us. So let's shift a little bit, Jerry. What NPG is seeing out there right now, especially, there's a huge move, especially with what's going on in the world, but there's a huge move to UC, CCaaS. So we've got UCaaS deployments happening, and I'd like to have you share with us how CATO's platform can help customers that are going down that road.
Sure. I know a few slides ago, right, we showed that the image of the 60 plus data centers that we have throughout the world. The value with CATO, right, is that anytime I'm going to anything cloud driven, and it can happen either publicly or privately, So any cloud-based application that you're trying to get access to, you can leverage the CATO backbone that is SLA, tier 1 SLA driven to route that traffic privately, optimized, and improve that experience all the way to wherever those resources are housed. So like as an example, Ring Central has 13 different data centers that they have throughout the world that they're using for supporting their voice infrastructure. As it stands today, CATO is in all of the same data centers that those services are located. So when I go to build out policies for customers, I can make sure that I basically am dropping off that traffic right at the doorstep of the provider. So I'm within 1 to 2 milliseconds. So I can remove a lot of the challenges that you would traditionally see, especially when you're going to a public internet service like UCAS or CCAS. And we've seen a significant adoption because of that. A lot of customers that look to leverage CATO because of that. And not only that, some of the vendors have taken notice as well. Like we've been recognized as supporting SD-WAN service provider for a lot of the different vendors in the marketplace.
Excellent. Let's throw another one at you here. With obviously the recent events around the globe, it's put some tremendous strains on IT departments while they're looking for ways to deploy flexible solutions for their associates and people. What are some of the relevant business problems that you see customers coming to CATO to help them solve?
Sure. And it's an excellent point, especially with the landscape right now, right? Everybody is in cost savings mode, but they still need to be flexible because the landscape of their architecture has changed, right? We've seen shifts in the way that budget is being allocated. Originally it was like, I want to keep everything siloed in-house, or maybe I wanted to look to explore cloud, but I still wanted to keep that architecture closed off, and I don't necessarily want to deal with work from home workers. I prefer everybody to come to the office. But with the landscape of the marketplace and the fact that COVID has really changed some of that, we've seen a shift in budget to move more towards how do I support users from home? How do I build out an architecture that's going to actually support my teams as they, potentially work from home, or even permanently work from home, because I need to deploy strategy that is a little bit more adaptive based on what's going on. The other thing is, we've seen a lot of organizations talk about, even more so, even heavier now, shift to more of a cloud focused strategy, and rightfully so, right? The ones that didn't do cloud prior to COVID have really suffered significantly. If I have an on-prem phone system, it's not going to be very effective if I got users all over the place. I have to now figure out ways to get them access to those resources. It's an uphill battle. So the customers that were ahead of the curve by moving some of that stuff to the cloud have really been able to benefit. So we're seeing more of a cloud adoption, and as an IT guy, you got to figure out how you're going to sleep at night. And how do you do that? You do that by making sure that you have security end to end for some of those services. So CATO can really help facilitate in a much easier way than you see with other products. Other big thing for us is that since we have this backbone that exists throughout the world, we can also optimize the traffic. So we can do a TCP acceleration. So customers will come to us when they have international business presence, and they really need to improve that experience for those TCP applications. And that's a problem that we can very easily solve for them. And then obviously the big elephant in the room with COVID going on is definitely our work from home capability. So we have a CATO client that will connect to any of the POPs that you see listed on the screen here, 50 plus POPs, and then leverage that middle mile backbone to route that traffic back. So you look at the way that most people design their VPN, they're backhauling it all to one location. It's super inefficient. They don't have the bandwidth to support it at that location, because now all of a sudden Susie's looking at Netflix and they don't have that same level of security that they traditionally did. So how do they get around that? They can get around that by leveraging a CATO type solution. I mean, it's been a full-time job for the last 2 months just setting users up, and we've seen an adoption of like 200 to 300% increase in the utilization of that service in the last few months.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about that traditional VPN approach. So thanks for hitting on that, because we're obviously in the thick of the impact of the work from home reality. So let's talk about, mentioned COVID now several times. We're in the thick of it, and hopefully things are going to get back to some type of quote unquote normalcy. But let's talk about what this COVID impact has had on CATO's ability to deliver solutions to your clients.
So, I mean, there's definitely been a shift. I will say that, right? The challenge that you have is how do you deliver the service to customers that are no longer at the office, right? They still need access to those resources. There are some things that we're doing to help mitigate that. So as an example, right, traditionally we would put an appliance at your office location. That appliance would route the traffic back up to the CATO cloud. That's been obviously more of a challenge, right? We've had delays in deployments because customers just can't get resources into those facilities. But one of the things that we can do that kind of helps mitigate that is that we have the ability to support third-party IPsec tunnels. So as long as the device that's at the edge currently, whether it be a firewall, router, as long as it can support an IPsec tunnel, I can really help customers test and get on the CATO network quickly and deploy quickly, because I can utilize those solutions, at least on the short term, to try to rectify that problem. Also, that VPN client has been huge, right? With COVID and the change in strategy. And like you were talking about, right, the new norm. What is the norm going to be? I don't know for a fact, but I'm going to guess that most companies are going to have more of a work from home policy, at least to a certain extent, so that they're prepared if a situation like this happens again. If we get a second outbreak, if, who knows, maybe some other global pandemic happens. I think we spent the last 10 plus years talking about pandemic, and we spent the last 10 plus years saying that, not knowing that it's a real threat, but not really addressing it. And I think now they can't be an approach any longer because of what happened.
Yeah, agreed. Let's talk a little bit about futures. You mentioned a little while ago about how CATO was way out in the forefront with this whole SASE core infrastructure and your plans for the future. As we know, things are moving so fast in this IT industry. We as IT advisors, we let our clients know, hey, we're your eyes forward, ears around the corner, looking around every bend for you and trying to keep track of all the emerging technologies and all that's coming out. One of the things I know that when I was looking into some of the comments that have been made by CATO, yourself and executive team, is that you've built a core infrastructure that really, this is why we think CATO is really a cool company, because you've just built this out in such a way that you've like put yourself into the plan, that playbook plan for all these CIOs and IT directors for building a core infrastructure and services for the future, for all, what's to come. Why don't you share with us some of the thoughts that, your team internally, without sharing any secrets, obviously, but what are you seeing from a futures perspective that could help CIOs, IT directors, as they are attempting to keep their playbook current, and also as they're looking forward into the next, as best they can, into the next 6, 12, 18 months ahead. Can you share some of that with us?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I'll start off by saying, and I think that you're on the right track there, the strength of the house is always built on the foundation, right? And the thing that's great about CATO is, from a foundation perspective, our foundation is driven by a software application that's driven for the cloud. And what does the cloud offer us is endless possibilities. We're not really restricted by the normal edge-based hardware application that's driven by resources, as in whether or not I'm able to support what it is that I'm trying to do, whether it be inspecting traffic, routing traffic, adding additional services. So right off the bat, the future is definitely bright because we don't have the same restrictions that you're going to have with a traditional edge-based solution. Honestly, for me, it's exciting to be a part of this just because, you know, we sit in these meetings on a regular basis with our production team talking about the new developments and the things that the direction that they're looking to go. And for us, right, since it's all our own IP, since we created it all in-house, it's very easy for us to add additional features. A lot of times that will even happen in discussions where clients are like, hey, if I want to come to CATO, I need this thing. And for me, right, I'm directly connected to the development team. There's not every organization you work for that you can be so connected top down to the entire organization. So that has been pretty fundamental. The other thing that I love is that we've decoupled the complexity, right? Instead of having 50 firewalls that are all over the place, I've got one software stack in the cloud, and that's where everybody goes for everything. So I have one set of rules, one set of procedures, one set of routing decisions. So I've really taken this super complex concept and really simplified it down into an architecture that makes it very, very unique. The value that brings is it gives the IT members an opportunity to start talking about how do I optimize my traffic. I'm starting to look at the way that I communicate and the way that I get access to my resources on a completely different level. I'm going on Amazon's webpage, or I'm going on my SaaS provider's webpage, and I'm saying, where are your resources located? Where are your data centers? Because I'm going to take CATO and I'm going to leverage this solution to route that traffic privately to those resources and drop them off at the front door so that I can guarantee that my user's experience is going to be better than it is today over the internet. And honestly, I think the part that I enjoy the most, you know, when I do these demos or when I walk customers through this technology, I'll sit down with an IT guy and I'll show him, like, this is how you can build this policy out and see how this is. And I get really excited about it because to me, right, the technology is something that I live for. But to watch them have that exact same approach, it's pretty overcoming. Like I can leave the guy, let the guy go on his own, come back 3 days later, and he's got 50 policies built out because now all of a sudden we've given him the keys to the kingdom, and they don't walk, they go right to running.
Yeah, as far as the keys to the kingdom too, one of the things that we've really been excited and intrigued about is just how you build out your feature sets and the analytics that are associated with your infrastructure. Is there anything you'd like to hit on as it relates to some special features that you've heard from some of especially the IT directors or network engineers that are getting in there, building these policies out and realizing that it's really an easy to use, flexible platform, gives them so many dynamic analytics, real-time information that they can use. And then maybe if you want to round that out with a little bit more on how security all plays into that as well.
Sure. Obviously, the cloud optimization is a massive component of what we're doing, right? The fact that I can route that traffic privately, keep the data off the internet, because we all know that the internet can be unreliable, unpredictable, right? So keep the data off the internet, keep it on that private backbone that's got that SLA driven behind it. Plus, it's optimized because we're going to add the optimization to remove the effects of latency. So right off the bat, that is a huge driving factor when we talk to customers relating to our product. Some of the other pieces is the fact that it's all integrating together. You talked about security, right? Right now, that's like a siloed type technology. I've got my firewall over here and I've got my networking over here, and they're not necessarily integrating together. But as we move through the way the world is working, right? You look at even the phone, just the phone. Like originally, you had an individual guy that handled your phone in your phone technology, and then you shifted to you had Cisco provide the first UC as a voice over IP solution, And then businesses started saying, hey, maybe we don't need that phone guy anymore. Let's shift to a model where we kind of like make this a silo of IT. We're starting to see the same shift from a network and security perspective to where it's becoming one guy's responsibility for both elements, when it traditionally was, here's my security guy and here's my network guy. So now as you got to try to wear all those hats, having a single framework that's easy to use and manage is awesome. The other thing that CATO does that is a big differentiation is everything that happens in the cloud happens automatically. So when you plug an appliance in, it's up, the firmware is updated to the latest patch released automatically. You're no longer responsible for that. You don't have to worry about whether or not the device is updated or if there's a security vulnerability, because we handle all that for you. From a security perspective, right, all the signature updates, the intrusion prevention, that's all handled by our backend SOC team. And you get to leverage the fact that we have 500 plus customers attached to that same infrastructure. It's almost a honeypot, if you will, right? So one guy gets hit with a virus or hit with some new ransomware or some new malware for their network. Yeah, that sucks, but CATO is going to be responsive and address that right away. And all the other 499 customers, they all get to leverage the fact that somebody else has had that experience. So we're really learning that we're stronger as a team, right? As organizations are all bound together and they're using those same resources to be able to support them from a security perspective, that can really add a lot of value to the conversation.
Yeah, this is why we just think that you guys are doing such cool things, and that added value is so important. One of the things that we've appreciated and share with the folks on this call is just how embedded you folks get into. You just become part of your customer's team, and you're there, you're available, you're ready to assist, and you have the intelligence, which is really just great engineering people and solid mindsets to assist your clients. Hey, Bob, it looks like there's a chat question that came in. You want to grab that one, or want to ask? Let me see if I can.
Yeah, sure. Dan Malloy has asked, could this potentially replace edge firewalls like the Cisco ASA or Juniper SRX? Does it provide IDS and other next generation firewall security options?
For sure. So right, obviously in our scenario, we are going to backhaul that traffic back to our POP locations. Once that data gets up there, we can put it through our security engines. We have all of we're a full next generation firewall stack, right? We can do intrusion prevention. We can do all the traditional things that the ASA or the Juniper firewall supports. And then we have some bolt-on components like anti-malware. We have a next generation. So anti-malware is a signature driven, looking for specific malware type trends. We have a next generation anti-malware, which is really a 0-day type threat solution where it's actively looking for characteristics of the network as opposed to specific threats themselves, and then being able to kind of identify stuff before it actually happens and prevent it from affecting the network. We have an intrusion prevention component as well. I know that was one of the things that Dan had mentioned. So we can do intrusion prevention components as well. And the great thing is, anyone that's familiar with intrusion prevention knows that it's an absolute eyesore. It's an absolute nightmare to be involved in. You go and you update that product. You have to sit there and deal with the fact that now you got hundreds, if not thousands, of false positives. You pray to God that your firewall doesn't lock up because the CPU spikes because that signature just wasn't an effective signature. The great thing about CATO is that we do all that stuff for you on the back end, right? And those updates take place. We validate them silently in the background. We remove those false positives, and that's when the customer actually gets engaged. We can actually improve that experience or that performance and make those systems a lot more effective than what they traditionally were. And then on top of it all, we also have a managed detection and response SOC team on the back end that use AI to generate reports for each of our clients. The great thing is, since we're involved in the network, right, we see all the traffic that goes in and out of the network. So we've got these tools that we can basically create reporting on to identify potential threats, and then we have a team of analysts that will review those reports to give you that human touch to identify if they're actual threats, and then work with our customers to help mitigate and resolve those issues.
Excellent. Great question, Dan. Thank you. Any other questions or conversation that anybody would like to have here with Jerry? We've got an expert in the industry. I want to open it up to that. I was thinking while you were talking about firewalls, though, what do you see the future of firewalls in general? I mean,
it's an interesting. Go ahead.
Well, as it relates to cloud and applications sitting out in the cloud, you know, we were in a conference not so long ago where a gentleman said firewalls are going to be a thing of the past, and I scratched my head a little bit and I said, well, you know, share with us thoughts on that comment that was made.
It's an interesting concept, right? I'm realistically, I don't see how the firewalls are going to go away. Like, you need to be able to secure the traffic in some way or another. I think what the person was alluding to is the fact that as we extend this traffic out to the cloud, we lose a lot of visibility and control. That's a huge hurdle to overcome. It's got to keep IT guys up at night, being able to move applications up to the cloud, have to rely on somebody else and have no input on whether or not users are going there or not going there and who else is attempting to attack it. So we can do a lot of the mitigation. Specifically, CATO can do a lot of the mitigation. I'll give you an example. A lot of users will use Salesforce. And one of the ways that we can lock down or secure Salesforce for the customer is that I can actually identify the application traffic specifically for Salesforce, because we have a significant application framework where I can actually identify applications based on the traffic types and things like that. So I can identify Salesforce traffic, and as that traffic goes to leave the network, I can utilize the IPs, the public IP space that I have at each of my POPs. I can make it flexible and allow it to egress at the POPs where those services are being hosted, like Salesforce, whether it be West Coast and East Coast. And then I can NAT the traffic to specific IPs, and then I can go into my SaaS-based applications like Salesforce and lock it down so only those publics are allowed to get access, so that it's not a publicly accessible service. It's only when you're in the network. The value there is that I can now, because I also have that mobile framework that allows me to extend that out to my mobile user base, I can force my users where if they want to use Salesforce, great, go ahead. But you're going to need to be in the network, so you're going to have to get connected in with VPN. And then the next big piece for CATO, and we're already on the way, and I think it kind of goes back to that previous point you had made, Bill, about like what's the future. The other big thing we're doing is we have a solution called SDP, which stands for Software Defined Perimeter. For people that aren't familiar with it, it's a zero trust framework. Essentially what it means is that whatever application you're using, that device has access to the network, but nothing else does. So it's very siloed off, so that from a security perspective, it really improves that overall experience, right? And the long-term goal of CATO is to extend these applications out. So basically a user can go without a VPN, they can go to a web page, they can authenticate against their SSO sources to get access to this portal page. And then from that portal page, they'll actually have a set of tiles, and those tiles will be the different applications that you allow that user to get access to. We're working to extend that out to cloud-based applications like a Salesforce as an example, right? And when the user clicks on that tile, it actually creates a secure tunnel to just that application. So if they have a malware on their computer, if there's anything else going on, it's completely independent of the organization because only that application has access. So it's going to really, really transform not only the security, but also simplify users' lives, because all they're going to have to do is just go to the web page. When they get to the web page, there's their 5 applications. If they're working from home, they don't even need to figure out how to make the VPN client work. They just click the application and away they go.
Yeah, that's cool. It's cool stuff. Bob, Chuck, those that are out there attending, do you have any questions or conversation you'd like to have with Jerry before we close out? We got a.
We have
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, we have a question from Scott Graham. Data detection security has been mentioned on the international scale. How is this handled when data is being exchanged between areas such as Taiwan and China, Europe, and the USA? Regulations are so different.
It's a great question.
It's an interesting question. I probably need to dive into it a little bit deeper to get an understanding of what specifically Scott is referencing. For us, the value is that we're encapsulating the data end to end, right? So it's the equivalent of like a private communication point. From a compliance perspective, right? Obviously, we're capable of supporting all of the traditional compliance regulations like GDPR, or we're SOC 2 compliant and things like that, which can help with some of the issues that he's outlining there.
Hey Scott, I just unmuted you. You want to add anything to that?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Hey, Jerry, thanks for all the information. I really appreciate it. Specifically, what I was referring to is our organization is global, and a lot of our manufacturing, well, all of our manufacturing happens, in China, Vietnam, Taiwan, and so, seeing as the governmental structure of some of these places is such that they will not allow encryption. They want to see everything. Data exchange between point A to point B becomes difficult. That's kind of what I meant on keeping things secure. How is that handled?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
That's a terrific question, right? As you can see on the map that Bill has loaded on the screen here, we've got 4 different data centers specifically in China. That is not by coincidence, right? So what we do that's a little unique there is everyone knows the firewall can create problems. A great firewall, they're going to restrict and prevent encryption from happening. They want visibility into what that traffic looks like. So as far as China is concerned, we adhere to the rules. And what I mean by that is that if they say no Google, we don't allow customers to have access to Google, which is obviously the law there. But the way that the traffic is routed at CATO is that we're not creating tunnels from site to site like what a traditional SD-WAN is doing. We're doing it different. You create a tunnel from the site to the POP. So because the POP is in mainland China, it doesn't have to go through the firewall. And we don't have the same issues relating to encryption or relating to them blocking the encryption in those scenarios. We then route that traffic privately out of China so that we don't have to go through that firewall. In some of the other countries that you mentioned, we can also take advantage of the same values like Vietnam. Vietnam, I know, is very restrictive about how much traffic you're allowed to leave country, and we can mitigate those problems because of the way that CATO is structured. So customers that come to us, and if they have Asia Pac presence, generally speaking, normally end up very, very happy with the CATO solution because of the way that we're architected.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And keep in mind too, Scott, one more thing to mention is that I can route the traffic privately out of China, but also public-facing traffic. So if you're running Office 365, I can enhance or optimize that experience because those servers aren't hosted in country. They're hosted in Hong Kong, and I can route them privately to Hong Kong. And without that firewall sitting in the middle, creating havoc, you're going to see that your end users are going to have a much better experience.
Awesome. Thank you.
No problem.
That is excellent, man. I know Scott's their corporate headquarters is in Taiwan. It looks like you've got Taiwan hit there. You've got the tops in China you mentioned and Vietnam. So that's all good. And I know they've got operations over in Europe. So that's a great question, Scott. Thanks for asking that. Other questions? It's about 53 minutes past the hour. We had this set for an hour session. If you've got some other questions, we can throw at Jerry. Great. If there's, while you're thinking of those, I'm just going to do a quick review here of what I put down here on a screen, Jerry, just to let everybody know. When you're looking at the CATO cloud, you got that global private backbone, you got Edge SD-WAN, security as a service, cloud data center integration, cloud application acceleration, mobile access optimization, and CATO management application. And then you've got your managed services also, where you've got the managed threat detection and response. You've got intelligent last mile management, hands-free management, and site deployment. So those, just want to share all of those in case that spawns any other questions or thoughts, either from you, Jerry, Chuck, or anybody on the bridge.
Yeah, Bill, if I can add to that, I've seen this presentation many times and I learn something every time. And Jerry, you did such a good job of articulating, those thoughts and what you're doing here. But I got to tell you, the eye-opener for me was the demonstration, and I've seen that many times as well. But I would encourage anyone on this call to see a demonstration of, everything in action, because it does open your eyes.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The other big thing too, right, is that this doesn't have to be a one fell swoop, replace everything all at once. So if you have an issue with SD-WAN, but maybe you're not in a position where you want to replace your security devices, there's no reason why CATO can't solve the problem for you. And then we look down the road to try to enhance that service and incorporate some of those other pieces. It's nice because of the way that we're structured. We make it very simple to just solve one business problem as opposed to having to handle the entire business all at once. So if there's a challenge that we can help somebody overcome, that's what Chuck and I live for, to be honest with you.
Thank you, Jerry. Chuck, would you like to add any extra thoughts before we close out here?
I was just going to say, thanks, Bill and Bob, for putting this forum together. I'm glad I got Jerry as my my solutions engineer. He's fantastic, and there's a lot of quality engineers out there in the landscape. What I'll say about Jerry is he does a great job of listening to the customer, and we just welcome any type of business conversations and see if there's an opportunity for us to help alleviate some pain or just kind of see what's out there in the future. So Jerry and I welcome any conversations, and to Bob's point, allow the customer to take a peek behind the curtains and see a demo on the portal and all the different analytics and real-time visibility you can gain from a CATO solution. So once again, NPG, you guys are great at what you do, and you're a trusted advisor for many of those clients out there, and we appreciate this forum to spotlight CATO. And Jerry, thanks again for your fabulous overview of the technology.
Yep, well, we wish to thank you both. Thank all of you who attended today's Spotlight Series webinar event. We hope that it was educational. You got some good information out of it. We can send the link to this recorded session out to each one of you. If you have questions, we'll make sure you have contact information. Again, at NPG Solutions, as most of you would know us, and for those of you that don't, we're in the trusted IT advisory space. It's our job to help you be part of your team. It doesn't cost you any to use us as an intelligence platform and an IT solutions platform, bringing solution providers to the table. CATO is one of our favorites in this space. There are others. Our job is to find you the best fit, the best one for you, and that may be CATO, it may be another provider. However, as you heard today, CATO's really done some great things. They're ahead in the marketplace. We anticipate they're going to stay ahead. And again, we wish to thank you, Jerry, and thank you, Chuck. We're honored to have you here, and we're honored to have all the guests that joined us on this webinar. Bob, you have any closing thoughts or comments?
No, I echo everything you guys have said. Thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be working with a group like CATO and a strong team. So thanks, everyone, for joining. Thank you, guys.
Yep.
Thanks,
Wish
John.
everybody a great afternoon, and take care.
Thanks.
Thanks all.
Take care.